Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a video I wanted to do but that you guys confirmed you wanted to see as well. Today we are going to compare the Anastasia Beverly Hills Rose Metals palette to the dupe palette that I made myself. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I went and duped the Rose Metal palettes first because I liked the color story, but I didn't think I liked it enough to buy the palette, and so I decided to try to dupe it first. And in the end, I ended up buying the palette itself and actually the other Anastasia Beverly Hills newer palette, the Nouveau palette. The Nouveau palette is what I'm wearing right now actually on my eyes. And can we talk about new hair? I am ready for these babies to come. I have short hair, my roots are done, they can come. I will feel okay afterwards. And I discussed it a little bit on Instagram, but after the birth of my daughter, I was with super long hair halfway through my back and roots undone, and I felt just not myself. Hair always in a bun, never clean enough, and just short hair is going to be easier and I'll feel better about myself. So that is what we're doing now. I'm gonna take the opportunity of having you on the camera looking at me instead of the table and the eyeshadows to make a little bit of a comment on the formula of these palettes, or an update on the formula of these palettes as I have been using them more. One thing that I can say is that I am still impressed with the mattes, usual Anastasia Beverly Hills quality. Today was the first time I used the shade Liberty right here in Nouveau, and I must say that I'm not completely happy because it didn't layer very well on this one that I used to set my primer. So that was a little bit of a sad moment because I love green shades, but it actually looks greener on the eye than it looks in the pan, which is a positive. And regarding the shimmers, on the other hand, they are a significant improvement on like classic powder shimmers that we had 5 years ago. Much more modern, much more creamy, but not that foiled formula that was only like thin and metallic. This one has a bit more texture, has a bit more interest. However, as you can see from my eyes, it's a pretty calm, everyday type of eyeshadow. Now I know a lot of people like that, but I'm a glittery, chunky, multi-dimensional shimmer eyeshadow lover, and I think I just need to accept that at this price point I will not find it in a palette. If you want them in palettes, you can look at Pat McGrath. Not even Natasha Denona gets there. Some of the gold, like one or two of the gold palette shimmers from Natasha Denona have that texture, but mainly Pat McGrath old baked shadows. And I say old because the last one or two motherships didn't have them. And on the other hand, I would just recommend you go indie all the way. And my favorites, because they're available to me and that's what I have, are the Glamshop eyeshadows. You'll see the comparisons in the swatches because I had picked Glamshop shadows for my dupe palette, so you'll see the comparisons, and I hope I manage with the lighting because this setup is a bit different. I don't have artificial lights because they're just in storage until the twins come, and I'm gonna try to show you the differences in sparkle and texture between an indie shadow and the Anastasia Beverly Hills ones. That intro out of the way, I'm gonna put my glasses back as my hair thing because my hair is in my face. I hate it. Tilt you down and let's get into these comparison swatches. So here are the palettes side by side, and actually I should probably show them to you like this because that is how they look. And a few things that we can notice immediately is texture differences in between these two shades. This is definitely a satin. This is already a little bit more shimmery. undertone differences between these two shades. This is much more yellow. This is much more white and pale. Let's say I think undertones are different here, and these might be different. Undertones are different here. This looks pretty similar. This looks pretty similar. And we're gonna go and swatch this one as well. So overall, I think I did a decent job. And I will link the video if you missed it, of where I picked this after going and seeing swatches, after going and swatching the palette in store. So let's get started. I am going to put my hand in the middle and swatch them next to each other, starting with the ABH shade Rose Quartz, which, as I mentioned in my try-on, what is it, a get ready with me with this palette, is really a satin eyeshadow. You cannot use it as a matte in the crease. On the other hand, I had picked this shade from, I think, ColourPop. No, this is Glamshop, Slightly Crazy, actually. You can see that this is a much more traditional shimmer, and it has a little bit of a peachier, warmer undertone, and it has some cooler toned pink glitters in it. I think you can definitely see it better on my fingers than on my arm. It comes probably from the direction of the light. And the fact that I can move it, but you can see the texture difference and the color difference. So that is one thing. Moving on to the shade Royal. This I actually haven't used on my eyes yet because it's quite dark, and it's just not a shade that I see myself using very often. It is a deep, not too sparkly burgundy shade, I would call it. I had chosen the shade Curtain Call by Makeup Geek. This is a foiled eyeshadow, and it's much lighter actually and more red. The finish is more metallic on the Makeup Geek eyeshadow, as you can see on my finger. But both, I think, are going to do a similar job. I think this one has a little bit more texture to it when you blend it out. I see some like more gold sparkles in it. I'm gonna show you at the end of the swatches all the just in a different direction towards the light, the comparisons. But I see some golden sparkles that in there, golden copper sparkles in there that you probably cannot see right there. Something that is probably closer to this is Makeup Geek Showtime, I believe, but I can't find it. I don't think I have it anymore. But if you do, it might be a similar choice. Next up is the shade Haze. This is one of my favorites in this ABH palette. It is a cool toned taupe. I used it in my Get Ready With Me. It has a beautiful chunky texture, a beautiful undertone. I really like it. I had picked this Glamshop shade called Scapolite. It's from their Crystal formula, and it's very chunky and thick and emollient and has a shine like nothing else. It is a very unique formula, but it is still quite a bit cooler toned and more gray, let's say. The problem with these eyeshadows, that I find at least, is that they all have a very silver sparkle on them. So the undertone changes, but the sparkle is always silver on top, and that kind of limits the use for me. But you can definitely see the difference in finish, and this is where I'm saying you can't really compete with the indie brands on this, even though I think Haze is one of the best eyeshadows in this palette. Really beautiful, chunky, dimensional, just not as impactful as this guy. Then we have Rose Fire. Now, this was one of the shades that made me choose not to get the palette initially when I swatched it, because it's a coppery orange, and it's way more orange than I remembered once I saw it, and I wore it actually. I had chosen the shade, I think this is Flamethrower by Makeup Geek. No, this is Legend actually, but Flamethrower would have probably been a better choice. And the shade Rose Fire is more orange, less copper, and it actually has dimension and sparkle in it. It's a really nice formula. I used it now. I mean, it's fall. It's about as appropriate as you can have for this time of the year. I think it looked really pretty on the eye. I just find these looks quite done and redone, so I don't really wear them a lot, but it's a very beautiful eyeshadow. You can actually see, I hope, on my fingertips that we have here Rose Fire is more dimensional than what Legend is. Legend is a bit just more flat metallic foiled eyeshadow from Makeup Geek. Moving on to Sunrose. It's a beautiful matte. It works really well. I am swatching on dry skin, by the way, and that's why sometimes shadows might skip. And I had picked the shade Freckles from ColourPop for this. But I must say that they're pretty much identical. I don't think I have anything else to say. I don't think I need to say much else about this. Now, the shade Nova. This is a beautiful greeny bronze. It has a ton of dimension to it. It has beautiful, like, yeah, bronze sparkle in it, and I think it's one of the best shades in this palette. Gorgeous, and definitely one of those that made me buy the palette. But I had compared it to Koszary from the Camo palette of Glamshop. Now this one is a marble eyeshadow. You can see just from here, like the texture of this and the shine and the sparkle is unbeatable. The shine on top is also a little bit lighter, but I think that the undertone is very, very similar. The difference here I find is also longevity in these eyeshadows, and I have one more marble in here as well. These crease much faster than a regular eyeshadow. They have much more emollient components in it, and then therefore they crease faster. So if you have oily eyelids, you'll have noticed probably that Glamshop shadows, but some people even have issues with Makeup Geek foiled, that they crease quite quickly. The next shade is Heavenly, which is the lightest shade in the palette. It's a beautiful, both topper, but also I use it a lot as inner corner. You can use it for cool and warm toned looks. I think it's really beautiful, dimensional, and yeah, it works both ways. I had picked a marble eyeshadow called Crystal from Glamshop, and this one has a little bit of a more rosy undertone, and you can see it's more white compared to the other one, which is a bit more yellow, a bit more champagne. So that's the comparison between these two. And again, the marble texture or formula of Glamshop is really special. It does crease. It's a pain to apply. It crumbles, but it's so unique in its delivery of amazing, amazing effect on your eyes. The next shade is Element from the palette. And this one right here, we go back to a little bit more boring. They also feel more powdery, more boring shimmers. And this one here is just a pretty shade. I don't know. I had picked actually a Morphe shadow, Hot to Trot, which is completely off in terms of undertone. Formula wise, it's maybe a little bit more shiny, but very little difference right there. This is more of an old school shimmer shadow. Totally probably not gonna get used by me here. You can see that it falls into this more rosy mauvey family that I just don't really wear. Maybe I'll wear it more in the winter, I don't know, but I don't really see myself wearing it a lot. So my preference would have gone to something that was a bit more of a neutral brown than a mauvey brown. Then we go to the shade Ashes, which is your cool tone transition shade versus Sun Rose, that was your warm transition shade. I really like this shade. It's a very nice cool tone brown for in the crease. Good balance. I had picked chic to chic. What is it called? Chic Happens from ColourPop. That is much more purple and pink compared to the one in the palette. I really like the one on the palette much more versatile for me. I can use it also with shades like Nova, and it pairs really nicely with Haze. I just really like it, and has a great formula. The shade Dune is your gorgeous deep terracotta brown. I had chosen the shade Cabin Fever by Makeup Geek. These round pans are, I mean, the whole brand is discontinued, but, and you can see that Dune is a little bit more red and less orange than Cabin Fever. Overall quite similar, but it gives you a little bit of more balance, pulling away from these very orange warm tones. Dune performs amazing. I love it. Definitely a shade that I'll use a lot. Next up we go to Nocturne, which is a dark cool toned brown shimmer. Nothing special about the formula of this one. This, the shade I had picked was from the Morphe 35M palette, and actually it has a more interesting sheen as well as a little bit of sparkle. The sparkle in this one is green, whereas here it really is just a cool toned, more grayish shade. I use this as an outer corner deepening shade, and that's about it. I don't blend it on the crease. I don't use it all over my lid. I don't really love the undertone of it. It really is about taste here. I think the palette is great. I'm just telling you what I do or do not like about it. And the last shade is the shade Noble, which is a dark brown matte. And it's not as deep as it looks when swatched, but you can build it up quite nicely, and it goes, for me, deep enough in the outer V. I had picked a Dark Roast by Makeup Geek, which is a little bit more neutral. I think overall Noble, but also the whole palette leans a bit more mauve burgundy than the shadows that I had picked. So as you can see here, you have a little bit more rose in this one than in this one. And yeah, these are the comparisons. I am going to now chase some light and sunshine to show you them properly. So here are the shadows seen closer up with the comparisons. On the right side, the palette there, and on the left side, the shadows I picked. And you can see really the difference between these sparkly Glamshop shadows and the Anastasia Beverly Hills ones. But I must say that I am not too sad about the formulas in there. As I said, I can get better from singles, but they're not bad at all for a palette of that price class. Now I have the light more on direct coming in through the window, and you can really see on the bottom you have my dupes, and on the top you have the palette. You can really see the difference between the Glamshop shimmers and the eyeshadow palette shimmers. I hope this video was useful and you enjoyed it. And let me know if you picked up this palette, or if you're going to in the future, or if I inspired you to look at your dupes instead. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about the formula and the choices that were made in terms of that formula and color story in here. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye!